10 burning questions. We're bouncing around on franchises today. Today we are moving over to Friday the 13th, the original, the OG from 1980. As usual, when I do this, guys, I'm just giving you 10 burning questions that I have while watching these movies. And I want you to join me in the comments and tell me what your answers to these questions are down below. And if you have any burning questions of your own, please put them in the comments as well. So I'm going to go through them here. I'm going to give you guys my answers. Let me know your thoughts on this. Right off the bat, question number one. This is a question that I love asking people, and it is Crazy Ralph a top 5 most important character in this franchise? Now, Crazy Ralph, if you think about it, yes, he's in the original, and yes, he's in part 2. He's killed off, obviously, in part 2 pretty early on, and he's not very, doesn't have a lot of screen time in the original. So how can he be most important character in the franchise? Well, let's just think about it. This is a franchise that cycles through characters. A lot of them are cannon fodder for our killers, and just different final girls. It doesn't really have a Laurie Strode, but is Crazy Ralph one of the most important ones? Because you could make an argument he has less screen time than a lot of these final girls who are only in one movie. But let's see. Obviously, Jason's the most important character in the franchise, right? I mean, I don't think anyone will argue with that. You could make a case probably for Pamela at number 2, most important, because without Pamela and her revenge, there's no Jason, right? Number 3, probably Tommy Jarvis, right? He's in 3 movies. We get 3 different versions of him. A lot of people, love Tommy Jarvis. Tommy Jarvis from part 6 is their favorite character. Maybe Tommy Jarvis from part 4 is their favorite character. Tommy Jarvis, I think you can probably pencil in at number 3. After that, who's the most important character in the franchise? Can't be Elias. We've never fucking seen him, right? I think it's Crazy Ralph. I think he is the 4th most important character in this franchise. And there's a lot of reasons for that. He brings kind of a not a gravitas, but he brings kind of the creepiness factor to this movie. He's a messenger from God, as he says. You're all doomed. And that's become a gif and iconic in the Friday franchise and things like that for a reason. Ralph is not our Dr. Loomis, but he is the one that is warning us and warning the characters, that it's got a death curse. So I think Ralph is super important. And Walt Gorney, who played him, I think it's Walt Gorney, I think that's his name, played him fantastically. Especially in this first movie, he could be the killer, right? We don't know. So it's very interesting, but I think Crazy Ralph is a slam dunk in the top 5, and for me, he's probably the 4th most important character in this entire franchise, limited screen time and all. Question number 2, is this the most underrated movie in this franchise? For me, kind of a slam dunk here, I say yes. Most horror franchises, especially popular horror franchises, the original is everyone's favorite. Whether it's Halloween, Scream, Nightmare, it's the original or part 3, right? This one, the original is rarely mentioned as people's favorite. It's either part 4, part 6, part 3, part 2. It's a while before people mention part 1. And a lot of that is because Jason's not in it, right? Or, he's in it at the end as a kid. I'm going to talk about that. But is this movie underrated? I know this movie has a lot of people that are not fans of it. I am a huge fan of it. I think it's massively underrated. And if you're asking me for underrated movies in the Friday franchise, just by definition alone, it can't be part 6. It can't be part 4. Probably can't be part 2. I think it's between this and part 5, and I'm a much bigger fan of this than part 5, although I do like part 5, and it's another underrated entry in this franchise. But for me, the original Friday the 13th from 1980, for a lot of reasons, which we're going to keep getting into, is the most unequivocally underrated movie in this entire franchise. Question 3, should Annie have been the final girl? This was another one I go back and forth with all the time. My gut instinct says yes, and maybe it's because I'm not a fan of Alice. I don't hate her, but she's just plain Jane, nothing to write home about, at least for me. And Annie's kind of spunky. She's got some tude to her. She's just, you got a great personality at the beginning, and she's killed off. She gets in the car with Mrs. Voorhees, who we don't see at the time, and gets her throat slit in that great scene. So I'm always wondering, should Annie have been the final girl? She's a lot more likable, brings a lot more to the table, I think, as far as watchability. But for me, I am going to lean towards no here. And the reason for it is just the importance of that Annie scene. We get the first two kills at the beginning, which are kind of lame, right? From whenever it was, 1957, 1963, whatever the hell that was. With the Kumbaya people. But then after that, okay, we're in present day. And we're following Annie. We think she's going to be the final girl. And then we get, oh shit, they kill her off. And I think that kill so early in the movie lets us know, okay, anything's on the table. So as much as I would like to see her as the final girl, I think her part in this movie is too important to waste. So for me, I'm going to say no, but I wouldn't argue with anyone that said yes. Question number 4. Is this the scariest entry in the franchise? For me, it's absolutely the creepiest. And I think if you're talking scary entries in this franchise, it's between this, Part 2, and Part 4. I'd say Part 3, but with the 3D, they have everything lit up like a goddamn Christmas tree. It's too bright for me. Too bright. Although, I love Richard Brooker as Jason. I can't wait to talk about Part 3. But anyway, I think those are the 3, for me, that are the scariest. And I think this one, once again, takes the cake. I would probably say this is the scariest movie. Part 4 is the second scariest. Part 2 is the third scariest. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number 1, the lighting. Okay, the lighting in the atmosphere. The lighting in this movie, it's so dark. It's lit up by flashlights and the moon. There's no stands with lights trying to slightly light up some scenes. No, it's dark. You're really in the fucking woods here. And there's something about Mrs. Voorhees that in some ways is a little scarier than Jason. She's obviously not the hulking brute force that he is, but hearing her say help me, when Brenda hears that, it's like, holy shit, that's fucking creepy. You're in the woods by yourself and you hear some little kid yelling, that's creepy shit. Her turn at the end is creepy, but there's so much other things too in this movie. There's so many scenes like at dusk. You guys have heard me talk, if you're a returning viewer of this channel, you've heard me talk about Ned's death. And yes, it's off screen, but at dusk, he sees someone in the background going into a cabin. And we kind of see it too. And he's like, hello? That's fucking creepy shit, the way it's lit. It's just the mood of that scene. There's so many scenes like that in this movie that are really creepy and really scary. Now, I'm not scared of it now, right? Someone watching this now wouldn't be scared of it. But as far as nostalgia goes, and when I first watched this is scary shit. So for me, this is, once again, the scariest movie in this franchise. Am I way off base on that? Tell me in the comments. Question 4. That was question 4. Question 5. Could this movie get a legacy sequel, Halloween 2018 style? Now, obviously there's some problems with that, right? The killer in this movie had her head chopped off. And we know no killers can survive getting their head chopped off. Okay, well, Halloween, never mind, whatever. You know what I mean. She's a fucking human. She'd be 175 years old right now, too. So how could they do a legacy sequel to this movie? Maybe Alice is, I don't know, a grandma now, right? And Jason comes. Or Pamela had another kid that's getting revenge on her. I don't know. I don't think it would work for a number of reasons. Chief among them, people are going to want to see Jason, right? And we'll see what they do with this TV series, which is already in development hell from what I hear and what we've read. But I don't think a legacy sequel to this movie in particular would work Halloween 2018 style. Question number 6. What is Steve Christie's story? I mean, what do we know about this guy? We know he's opening up the camp, right? Why? We hear Pamela say, I'm an old friend of the Christies. What does that mean? Are the Christies known around the Crystal Lake area? I'm fascinated by this. We know he's kind of a womanizer, right? He's kind of like Dan Chalice in Halloween 3. We know he's kind of being creepy on Alice a little bit. He wants to revisit their romance. Probably took advantage of his position and power. We see him flirting with Big Bertha at the diner. But he also has a relationship with the police. a good relationship where they drive him, halfway when his Jeep's not starting. What is his story? I want to know more. And I've never read, the novelization or anything like that to this. So maybe they do explain more. But I want to know more about Steve Christy's story, his background, his family. Why is he so hell-bent on opening this camp? I think that'd be some interesting stuff. Question number 7. Was Tom Savini as important to this movie as Victor Miller and Sean S. Cunningham? I'd almost say yes. Now, obviously, Miller and Cunningham, well, they're battling. They've been battling for years. But they came up with the story, right? And so we need the story to have the movie. But would this have been a success without Savini's special effects work? Seeing some of these kills for the first time, it's like, holy fuck. And imagine being the audience member in 1980, never seen anything like it. Getting back to Annie's throat slit. You see it kind of open up, and that's really fucking realistic. The Kevin Bacon kill, really realistic. The Marcy kill, realistic. And on and on and on. Mrs. Voorhees beheaded, reaching, for her head with her hairy knuckles because it's Savini's hands. I'd argue Savini was just as important as Miller and Cunningham to this movie's success. Question number 8. This is kind of coming from my buddies Blake and Ronnie at the ATGNAT podcast. They're big Friday fans, probably the biggest Friday fans I know. But they've kind of half brought up this question in one of their videos, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. And that question is, was Jason the R word? I'm not saying it, Blake. Was Jason the R word? Was he slow? Did he have cognitive issues? We know he was kind of shaped like a mongoloid, right? When he came out of the lake. We know Mrs. Voorhees stops when she says, he's a special boy. He wasn't a very good swimmer. We know that, and that's kind of implying that. But other than that, was he slow? Was he the R word? I don't know. Is that just built into our heads, like the Mandela effect? Where everybody just assumes Jason is an idiot? Why? Because he was shaped like a mongoloid and he wasn't a very good swimmer? Is that the only reason why? We all just assume it and it just kind of carries on a life of its own? I don't know. Maybe he was a normal kid who just had some face defect. Interesting stuff how it's just kind of become woven in the fabric of pop culture that Jason is the R word. Clearly he has brains in later sequels. So it's pretty interesting stuff. I don't know. I always assumed he was. But after listening to Blake and Ronnie talk about it, I'm not so sure. Question number 9. Does this whodunit bother you? Does it work? So, one of the complaints about this movie is it's a whodunit, but we never even meet the killer, so how could it be a whodunit when we don't even know whodunit? Well, I want to make the argument that this is not a whodunit. And here's why. Because we're not really sitting around, and it's hard for me to say, right? Because I don't remember the first time I watched this movie. But we're not really sitting around wondering, and the characters aren't wondering, who's doing the killing. Maybe some of us are, but, the movie isn't built in that structure to be a whodunit. You're not sitting there watching Ned being killed. Oh, I wonder who's doing it. Maybe a little with Crazy Ralph. Maybe a little with Steve Christy being gone all day. But for the most part, this isn't the classic whodunit where we're trying to figure it out. Which character is it? It's not Scream. Okay? So I think it does work. Because it's not a whodunit in my eyes. But what about you? Do you think the whodunit works if you think it's a whodunit? Question number 10. You can hear my dog in the background. He definitely thinks it's a whodunit. Apparently he disagrees with me. Question number 10. Should the truck driver from the beginning have came back at the end? That's what I get for letting my dog in here. But what I mean is we got introduced to that truck driver, and he's a fascinating character to me. Just a fascinating character. Because, he's, warning warning Annie, shut up, Ralph, not to listen to Ralph, right? And then she gets to call him out on it when he's like, you should quit. And she's like, you're starting to sound like your friend back there. And he's telling her about, the water didn't work, and then this happened, and then this happened. and then he, drops Annie off, or Alice, no, Annie off. Jesus, Nick. He drops Annie off, and we obviously know what happens to Annie. But should he have had some second thoughts and kind of came back to be the hero at the end, or came back to buy time for Alice, then to chop Mrs. Voorhees' head off as she's killing the truck driver? I think he'd be a fascinating character to, kind of make a surprise appearance at the end, because he's, feeling guilty about dropping Annie off and thinking he needs to come help, these kids because of the Camp Blood, the death curse that he, was talking shit to Ralph about for repeating, and then he's saying the same thing. So I think that would be an interesting, way to kind of weave in the beginning of this movie to the end of this movie and have him come back. So those are my 10 burning questions for Friday the 13th, 1980. Apologize for my rude dog. Just kidding, buddy. I'm not editing it out. I don't have time, guys. I'm very busy. I know we all are. But anyway, tell me your answers to the questions down below. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you as always, and I'll see you on the next one.